Okay, so let me start with a big thank you. I think it was, for me personally, it was a great 2 days. You were very helpful in being both on time in the beginning and the end. I'm still completely amazed from last night's lightning talk session, which was so on time. I think you'll all be issued honorary Swiss passports or something. Um, so thanks for all that. What we have planned right now is something I personally haven't done before. Mark will explain exactly how this works. Basically, will be a question discussion session about the conference, but maybe about other topics you find interesting. And then after that, when this fades out, but not later than 6, we'll wrap it up and call it a day. Okay?
Okay, thanks. So yeah, we want to have something like a panel, a discussion about the conference. But it can't just be a simple panel. I'm from Germany, so we need some rules. This can't just be like that. So the subject is really, as Jürgen said, interesting stuff about the conference. Things that you learned, questions that you still have. The conference itself, I know that a couple of people are here for the second or third time, like things, what you think the conference does, what it should do in the future. And the idea is that we have people sitting in the front discussing whatever topic comes up. But you will guide it. That's why we gave out the pens and the index cards. Write down questions, things that you want to ask, things that you want them to discuss. Write them down, and when you have something, raise your hand, and then I will collect them and sort of guide the discussion that we have here in the front. But the other thing also is, as you see, there is one empty chair. So if something gets discussed where you think like, hey, I really have something to contribute, I know something about it, I have an opinion, I tried this out, I think what these guys are saying is totally wrong. Come to the front, take the chair, and then the rule is somebody else has to get off his chair, sit down, so that there's always one empty chair. So that it rotates a little bit around. At some point, we might have nobody from the panel left here. It's no music. It's just the questions. And so while you guys can write down your questions and things that you want to have discussed, I just want to give it to the 4 people that we have here. Introduce yourself very quickly and just tell us what you think about the conference, the number one thing that you thought was interesting, challenging, a big puzzler that you still have. Who wants to start?
I'm starting? Okay. That's true. Big mistake. So one piece that I would like some feedback is the following point. We had some discussion about the mix of people or topics for the talks, especially the point whether we would want and how much we would want commercial contributions or contributions from company versus academia. Right? So in the end, we decided about a mix of 2 or 3 only that were from other companies talking about their things. I think UTest was the most prominent one where it was clear that it was maybe the furthest away from a deep technical discussion and more a general framework or offer of thoughts and concepts. And I personally took away that went pretty good. But I would be interested what others think. Should we continue this? Should we up it? Should we have more of that? What are your thoughts? So I guess I'll start with you guys. What do you think? Was it a good mix?
Yeah, I think it's a good mix when we have different topics. Testing is large. There's many different aspects of it, different applications. The topics here were quite interesting from the early days, back in the 1960s, to what CERN is doing with something that's really nationwide, worldwide. So this is, I guess this is one of the reasons maybe we're in testing is because we like to have an overview of multiple things, maybe not going deep down in one area, but we like to see the full product and we want to be the first one who can see all the pieces together and test them. That's personally what excites me in testing. I feel like I'm the test pilot for something that nobody had experimented before. And if we have only one topic, then we might restrict ourselves to only one aspect. So another thing also that I like maybe your feedback on is what do we do from here? So we do this is a public conference, everything here is going to be posted on YouTube. what do we do to expand more collaboration in the future, not only here once a year, but in the whole community? How do we keep in touch? How do we make more contributions and we keep the dialogue open all the time? So we have the Wave, we have many tools like this. I'd like to hear what you think, how we can contribute, and also how you can contribute as well.
So there are a couple of things that I generally like in conferences that we've done here, and that it's a focused community. In fact, we've kept it artificially small, limited to 100 people, which also meant that we imposed a bit more on the attendees. It wasn't a simple registration process, and we had to be, say, unfriendly to a lot of people and not have them here. But I had the impression that we really had a great conference and good discussions going. So I think at least it was worth it. Another thing that I liked about it is that a single track conference, that we don't have several things in parallel, because it tends to divide the community, and that's also, if it becomes too big, people mix and interchange, and it feels like a community, and it feels like we have a one discussion running that really evolves. Yeah. So I think we didn't do it too wrong in that respect.
Okay, so while I pass the mic back, if you have questions, let me know and I collect them. And if you want to discuss this with these guys, what they brought up, just come up and sit on the chair. You have to sit on the chair.
Yeah, there have to be some prize.
You can't just yell from the background. Go ahead.
Okay, so what I liked about the conference here is, so I was participating both in the selection of entities as well as presentations. And on the board of people who selected presentations, we had like different inputs. Like I'm more from the practical side, while Andreas, for instance, is more from the academical side, understands the formulas at least.
You're just doing stuff. You don't understand it.
Yeah, exactly, yes. And I'm just nodding once in a while. So it was very interesting for me to still see that it gives some sort of overall picture. And the thing that I liked most about the practical presentations is that there was actually something to take away. So the UI layout bugs talk, for instance, where I really had something to work with, as well as the performance testing talk, for instance, and the gaming talk and others which don't come to my mind now. But I learned some new stuff, and I wouldn't have expected that, to be honest. Was really good.
Okay, so the first question was, I mean, here at the conference, we had already many testing tools, frameworks, technologies, and there are many more out there. How do we know where they are? How do we find them? How do we know which ones to use? And I mean, for you guys, I mean, your main job is testing. Like how do you do this? Right answer.
Search engines might be an option, yes. I think my really honest answer is if it's hard to find, then it doesn't have enough users and it won't be developed anyway. But in general, it's just rumors, more or less. You just talk to colleagues. Read, work, educate, yes.
Seat.
Talk to colleagues, yeah. There's a free seat. Yeah, basically, it's like intern in our company, tools get spread around by talking, by getting the word from other people. There's usually like a few people in companies or in communities who research this kind of things, who know this kind of things, and just find one of them, make them your friends, and you're good to go.
You know, maybe on top of that, we did have just recently a pretty good effort to organize our tools, right? So a couple of folks got together and tried to put enough information together about tools. First of all, what these tools are, what they did, but also information about where they were used, what success cases were, who contacts are, etc. To give you a bit more, or us, this is internal, obviously, to give us a bit more than just the name of a tool and word of mouth. So if you're actively going to look for help in a certain area, you would at least know where to start and who to talk to. Question could be, is that something in general that is necessary? Right? Is it worthwhile to do something similar for publicly? Right? or is that an area that is well enough that you can read enough about to be satisfied, right? Already, don't know. We had that problem internally.
So yeah, internally we have different repository of information. We have wiki, we have sites, and there's lots of information going right and left. One thing that was helpful was to organize something that we call the toolbox. The toolbox is quite successful. It's quite, it's been a year since it's here, and it has a lot of tools. And what Jürgen was saying is anyone can put feedback there. And so, do we need a toolbox for the entire community? Make it public? I don't know. That's a good question.
I think one very pragmatic thing you can do that I often do is look at the forum, the user forums of the tool, and that usually gives you some impression of how good the tool is.
So the way that I've found most of the tools that I've used most recently has been by going to user group evenings. So I've been part of the Agile community in London, and those guys introduced me to a bunch of stuff. Go to various code jams and whatever it is. But the user group evenings are a really great way of being introduced to what people are currently enthused about, what they're engaged with, and to get an idea for like what the community is actually using and involved with.
Similar to like all the tools and everything. So we heard a lot about like tools that or methods that check correctness, that check usability, that check latency, compatibility, APIs. How do we know what we should test for?
Wow. All right, well, from a pragmatic point of view, does it work? And what is it that our users care about? For example, with a search engine, if you can't input a term and get results back in a reasonable amount of time, it's not worth going to that site. Whereas if you're writing a system for an internal group, like sales or marketing, maybe they're happy with longer latency or longer request times, but they need a different set of features. So I think one of the things that you should do when you're thinking about what to test is talk to the people who care about what it is, like the sort of user-driven approach of figuring out what you need to do. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Just another point to this, so if you measure also usage, then you can see by testing one area if that increases the usage or not. So for us, when we start a new product, we are really careful about the traffic. We don't do too much until we can monitor the traffic. Once we have data, we add features and we see if the new feature is adding or decreasing traffic. So if you're wondering what you should test, you can do maybe the same thing. You can test one category, see if it improves the usage, as Simon was saying, or the traffic, and if it doesn't, well, you're not testing the right thing.
So to add something to what Simon was saying, when I was asked to test a product, I got trapped into the mindset that I just, I have the function test, load test, security test, and so on at my hands, and what do I have to use? While practically what helped me most is just to take a look at it from an end user perspective, see what I would care about, and then afterwards try to map this to the skills I have at most. But just take a look at it from an end user perspective, and you will naturally find out what you need to take a look at, even if it might be hard.
So in particular, one thing I'd like to mention is that I have the feeling that you don't influence the quality with unit testing so much as what you influence with unit testing is more the speed of development. This whole developer testing is really an aid to development and not assessment of the quality. If you want to assess the quality, what as everybody else basically has already said, you need the users, right? And you can do alpha testing and you can do beta testing, and these are still very effective and cheap forms if you do it right. So we call it alpha testing, we call it dog fooding, right? And we do it a lot. And I think the most exciting applications we write are the ones that geeks like, because we're geeks and dog fooding works extremely well with that, right? So.
Okay, so then we have a couple of questions about the conference itself. The first one from Jason, I have a hard time to pass. I try. Say it.
Okay, I'm gonna.
I would just like to ask for a round of applause for the guys that did all the last
So that's David Morgan and Robert Nilsson. Thanks a lot for typing. Yeah, they were furiously typing all day long. So, yeah, the comment was it's difficult to understand why Wave is interesting and what is the use case for Wave. And this setting was a way to see how Wave can be efficient by collaborating. I'd like to hear maybe other people. Did other people had the same feeling?
How did it work for you? You're sitting there.
I was surprised that it was useful, to be honest. So, like in terms of this live blogging stuff, I'm not used to this modern stuff, but that actually was really helpful. I'm looking forward to whether it will be used by the people on the date on tomorrow or afterward as well for collaboration or not. I'm curious. Let's see.
A dating service. So I'm a huge fan of Wave. I've been using it particularly for collaboration on open source projects. Like, it's really hard to get everyone in the same place at the same time, but sort of, you know, just being able to have a Wave and a sort of ongoing discussion. We were working on the Ruby bindings for WebDriver, plug, WebDriver Selenium 2. It's going to be awesome. But yeah, thank you. I don't think anyone noticed.
Next time you say WebDriver, he will kick you.
Yeah, fair enough. But we were working on the Ruby bindings, and what happened is we threw together a to-do list and sort of commented on the bits and pieces, and then people were farming that, and it was sort of a live progress and document of what was going on. And whenever anyone got stuck, they were sort of able to ask for help. But because everything was in the same place, it was, you know, it worked out really well. So I think sort of Wave is just this brilliant collaboration tool. And I know I sound like a fanboy, but I am.
Yeah, come here. Sit down.
Hi. Okay, so I'm Alexi from the Google office in Sydney. And what we find amazing with Google Wave is that as a project, as a product keeps on being used by the whole community out there, people start to find on their own all sort of user case. So we've been during this conference, we had the opportunity to see, okay, what it's like to carry on, to follow the transcript of a talk. But there are so many other user cases which keeps on showing up every day. And I would not be surprised that in 1 year, 2 years from now, we will be very used to a new form of user case that people don't even think about it now. Just to give you an example, when we started to, just by introducing a gadget or by the using of the robots into conversation, you really quickly go into a new dimension of application. I just have as an example another one in mind, which is we use in our team a gadget that we call the status gadget, which is a very convenient way to use a Wave anytime you want to keep track of the state of the status of any situation. In this case, this is when you're a group of persons and you just want to know, okay, have a brief, quick overview of who's doing what this week. It's okay. It's really hard to explain without showing this gadget, but it's a fabulous. You're going to see more and more gadgets showing up, which make just amazingly new use cases for Wave. So keep an eye on that.
Also, I think throwing Wave at a room of 100 engineers is basically a cheap win, more or less.
Yeah, the important thing with Wave is it's a miserable experience on your own. And maybe that's why Jason didn't like it. But also, like, it's a terrible email client, and it's a terrible chat client, but it's a great collaboration tool.
And I would also like to thank all of you. I think this is the most testing Google Wave has ever gotten. I mean, hey, a room full of testers, we couldn't wish for anything better. And we're also quite happy that this is the first time Wave was used in this way, and it was at a testing conference. Isn't that great?
One thing, I don't think it was planned that way, actually. It was kind of improvised, isn't it? I mean, thanks to you. Or did you? When did you have the idea? Okay. So yeah, I guess maybe Wave was not really released when we started the conference, so we couldn't ever have it before.
Okay, so somewhat related to that, I don't know if Wave helped with that, or maybe it actually hindered it. Do you think that people got the chance to actually meet, talk, and interact with each other? Or was it too much program, not enough time to meet, not enough time to just chat? And again, did Wave maybe help with that, or was it just a totally separate thing?
I just thought, so I think we had plenty of breaks. We had some talks that were actually shorter than scheduled, so we have even more free time. We had only one evening, but, well, yeah, maybe there would have been more conversations on the second evening with more beer, maybe. So yeah, we need to hear from you, but I think the size also was quite small and was a benefit for interactions.
Do you feel that you could talk to everyone you wanted to talk to?
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
Doing a lot of talking. I had a great time just chatting to like all the people that I've not met before, and the people who had questions, like chatting with the Microsoft guys. I've not had an opportunity to do that before at a conference, and and it turns out you're as normal as the Google guys are. But not just those, like I was talking about the database feeder that we heard about the other day, and that was interesting. And like all these sort of little pieces that sort of come together, and those hallway conversations, I think, are the things that sort of provide a lot of the value of conferences like this to me. And I had plenty of those and enjoyed it a lot.
So I think GTAC is probably the reason I work here today. I visited GTAC in London. That was 4 years ago? 3 years ago. And before that, I did pretty much the same thing, but as in a consulting company in Zurich. And I was out there and always felt very lonely, being the guy who tells everybody. Well, I don't do anymore. I'm basically, thanks to this conference, because I found out that there's many other people with the same problems that I have out there. And we can all talk to each other and figure those things out. Yes, hello, my name is Nicholas. I've been a tester for...
Are you normal? Do you feel as normal as everybody else now?
Phil, here, a new person.
Okay, well, I got the mic. I think I'll continue talking about just the talking I've done here. And I went to GTAC in New York 2 years ago, and initially I was a little concerned because this is a bit of a smaller conference. But honestly, I think that's really worked out for me. I've talked to just about as many people as my brain can handle in, shallow things, cultural things, in-depth technical things. It's been pretty fantastic, I have to say. I haven't met all of you yet, but I'm working on it, and I can probably read your blips on the wave. Blips, is that it? Wavelets? Something like that. I don't know all the terminology yet. Yes. So, yeah, I think it's really worked out. I think it's a great size, and there's been a good amount of good amount and a good number of venues for conversation.
Thank you. Well, I'm a huge fan of small events, so this is a good size. I have two requests. One, I don't know who to look at. One not you. One of which is some way of finding out who's in the room, because you know the thing, you get to like the middle of the second afternoon, and I should have talked to that person. So maybe if we could find some way of bringing that forward, and then maybe an event the night before, because most of us in town anyway, because to get here for the following morning. So perhaps we could do something there.
Oh, no, you have to stay here till someone replaces
You
you.
sit here until someone else comes.
So perhaps we could use... Anyway, in response to his first request, I'm wondering if latitude would be appropriate for that. I haven't actually used it, but it seems like that's more or less the purpose. I don't know if it goes down to who's in this conference room or not, but I get the impression it does. And given what we do, I figure most of us have some kind of GPS pretty close to us.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that Nicolas created a wave where you all invited to put your details, and that's a nice way also to keep in touch and have the contacts.
I didn't create it.
Okay, all right.
Created it.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's get to the next point.
Yes, well, I'm very sorry. So as you just heard, this entire thing, the fact that we're using Wave here is completely random. Basically, when we started the company, I'm getting tired. I need a drink. Yes.
That was the master plan all the time.
When we started a conference, damn, I was found out. When we started this conference yesterday morning, I actually didn't know. So I found out that people had gotten their Wave accounts yesterday evening during a dinner, where it's the first time I met some people from the conference. Because I obviously wasn't invited. I was on it. So I didn't know. I had no idea
Another hug.
people would have it. We found out just then. Sorry?
Do you need another hug?
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm good. I'm good. I'm getting therapy, don't worry.
Now you will.
I noticed that you strategically put the podium between.
Yes. It's just friends. All right. But basically what I want to say is we really didn't know if this was actually going to work or not, and if people would get their accounts or not. While we were having the keynote, I was trying to find out how groups work. Okay, so that's about as organized as this whole thing was. So, and I'm really terribly sorry. So one thing we learned for the next time we do this is that we need some spare invites for the people who, for some reason or other, didn't get one. And you guys are all in the list, and you're all going to get your invites. And if you don't, you can hassle me personally. I will make sure of that. Sorry?
Larry.
Exactly, Larry@google.com. Actually, please don't do that. That'll be even worse. But and unfortunately, the way the invites pipeline works, I can't just give you an account right here and now. So sorry for that. I'm really very sorry for that.
Okay, so one more, like somebody said, first of all, thank you for the perfect organization. That goes to Jürgen and where's Marie?
Marie, where's Marie? Where's Marie?
Marie, there she is. Woo! And so actually back to testing, so the question is about, so if we do all our testing, how do we know about the impact of the testing that we do? How do we know that we don't like spend more money from the company than we actually save with our testing? How do you know that in your activities, that you focus on the right things and that you actually generate value with testing?
I'm going to speak not from experience necessarily, but one thing that stuck with me from GTAC New York was, I think Patrick said, measure everything. And that's been something I've tried to implement in every project I've done, that first we figure out just how wrong everything is, and then we write the tests to prove it, and then when it's fixed, our tests show that it's not so wrong anymore, and we can say, you know, we're saving this many hours of execution, have this many more free machines, whatever it is that matters to you. But I think it has to do with understanding what your problem is first.
Yeah, we're going to force you to come up here. Test-driven development, behavior, BDD-driven development. I think the important thing with those isn't so much that you're doing the testing, it's that you're making the maintenance of the project easier. So over the lifetime of a project, my experience has been the teams that are doing strong TDD, strong testing, are the ones who have the most flexible code bases and who can make progress faster over the lifetime of a project. Sure, you know, the initial stages take longer, but you know, a project doesn't last 2 weeks, it tends to last 2 years, because you know, once it's complete, you don't delete that code, you keep it around, you maintain it until it's no longer fulfilling a function. So in that case, sort of testing as a mechanism for lowering the cost of maintenance is a useful tool.
Yeah, I've pretty much the same opinion. What I would like to add, for me, one metric has always been the confidence that developers have in changing their code. So, that's the Googler. Too many Googlers up here, people. Come on, please. No, you can stay. I want to leave. I want to leave. Yeah, so the confidence of the developers in changing code, right? I mean, sometimes you see this piece of code, or you deal with somebody, and you say, hey, why don't we change this code to do this and that? And they look at you like, oh yeah, the guy who wrote that has actually left the company, and it works, so don't touch it, right? And this, for me, is you can't easily put a dollar value on it. But maybe you can. I mean, the extra hours that the developer spends making this change in the code base, just because he's not confident enough that the change will be working, is actually really big. And I think that's one of the biggest values that testing can bring.
Thank you. I just have in mind this comment that one of my team leaders said one day on about testing, which is that when you think about it, a very, very good tester would be someone who, in fact, manages to make his job almost useless. What I'm trying to say is that if you, ideally, if you can try to keep on changing the direction, because things change very quickly, you have to use a lot of common sense, and it was amazing to see in this conference to see that there's no one bullet fits it all. You have to keep on looking at what's the new main problem going on, whether it's on security, on latency, but the connection in all of that is that the final goal is always to try to be by achieving the maximum efficiency as possible, making you eventually almost ideally useless. I mean, if you're there, it's because there's there are bugs. But if you keep in mind that what you want to do is to put together framework which is as automatic as possible, where you don't need to go policing after the people, where bugs are prevented as early as possible. In fact, ideally, we would like that they don't even happen in the first place. That's really the final goal. So when you really truly think about it, you realize that we're in this very ironic situation where what we're truly aiming for is making a job useless eventually, which is a beautiful goal.
If I remember correctly, the question was, how do we measure, right? And how do we measure the benefit, the dollar benefit to the company? Okay, so for me, this is probably the major challenge, especially where I'm at. I'm in Tel Aviv. I'm the only software engineer in test down there, and my brief is to try and convince extremely smart, extremely capable, and very impatient people to impatient because they want to get the features out, because we're really good at getting features out. To convince them to try something that's going to cost them time. And I think this is, we need to realize that when we start talking about this, we've gone beyond the boundaries of computer science and we're entering into psychology. Okay, and I think that's something that conferences like these, and especially networking and just continually talking to people, trying to collect as much anecdotal evidence as possible, and extracting from that some sort of metric. Yeah, hang on a second. I think that's almost impossible. But we have to keep trying to do it. It's like, we're looking for life on Mars or whatever, and it's pretty nigh impossible that it exists, but we keep doing it because we think that the search itself is worthwhile and has benefits, and that's what we're talking about here. So if anyone has, some sort of recipe of coming up with metrics that can prove that TDD had this particular measurable benefit, and we have a sample of 30 or 40 projects where we can show that there has been tangible benefit, please let me know. As far as I know, that such studies don't yet exist.
Yes, the numbers are something like reduction in bugs in production of, I think it ranges between 50 and 90% at a cost of about, at a intuitive cost of about 10 to 15% extra development time. Yeah, they did. Well, the bug reduction is not anecdotal, and these are big projects. And from what I remember, the research was done post hoc, so there's no, it was done after the projects were closed, so there was no influence on the development style. And I think the other thing that's missing from this is, certainly, our experience with Simon of doing TDD, it's not so much about, we test it to make sure it works, but the other part of it is we test, this whole thing about pulling the test forward so that you know what you're supposed to be doing and when you're done. And I think that part of it is actually much more powerful than the regression part. And there's almost, with a lot of this, it's almost worth just doing, even if you never automated it, which you should do, but even if you never did, the process of thinking at this stage what I need to do to get done is really powerful.
The subject of cost and how to convince people to test first, automate tests, because we can split them in order of importance, I think. Although I can debate if automating a test is more important than testing first, is huge. So it made me come from the back here, here in front. I've got very recent experience because I was in a project where big project, a lot of components in the system, and we had a portal, and we actually had about 6 months of work doing Selenium tests, which during development, where we were cranking out features were really flaky. We kept putting in effort to keep them green. It was a huge amount of effort and a huge cost. And at one point, actually in several points, it was actually debated, do we drop them altogether? And I was like, we have to use them, use them. And then we put the project in maintenance mode, and the team went from 10 to 2. And we changed the data grid. 6 months, 2 people fixing the tests. I don't know how much the cost is in thousands of euros. That one change in that data grid, it was all worth it, all worth it. Overnight, the tests just went from green to red, all of them. But they were built up in such a way where we could look at the report and go like, oh, that and that needs fixing. That and that needs fixing. Next build, half of the tests, green. Another 2 errors, fixing, and in one day we did a massive refactoring of the whole project, and it was just worth it. Worth the hassle to convince them that it was this. And it's experiences like that that you can share in an event like this, which is people who've gone through such experiences, and you get anecdotal data, and also each project we go through that, I just gather arrows in my in my pocket. So the next time I go to a client, I go like, here, I did that and that and that. It cost that much, but at the end, it saved our asses actually.
The other thing is, I seem to remember something that you wrote, Mark. No escape. Mark, I seem to remember something that you wrote when you were at VMware about how you managed to get your release cycle down from, from code done to out the door, from months down to weeks when you started introducing. It's got your name on it somewhere on the web. When you started doing TDD, or started doing some kind of. You were lying at the time.
Which project was that?
I don't remember. I've got the citation somewhere. The other thing, from my it's a bit vague but I seem to remember there are papers that report again reduction of sort of massive reductions of or raising of quality is associated with number of tests, and the only way to get people to actually write tests is to do it first. I mean, the reports are the first part, and then my experience is the second.
In terms of getting people to adopt TDD, I think there is something of a eureka moment that's needed, and I happen to have that thanks to one of Steve's works. I was just reading the mock roles, not objects paper, and it was my first time really doing it from the start, writing out my tests. The test covered everything that the component was supposed to do, and like Steve said, I knew when I was done, and that felt good. That was something that, you don't really feel in software development, well, until the project is canceled, and then because otherwise these things don't tend to end. But when you have something you can actually rely on, that you can work towards a goal and you can accomplish, it's a tremendously inspiring feeling. And we have a set of behaviors that will make that happen. So I think if we can put people in situations where they experience that personally, whatever it takes, I think that will really help in adoption of TDD and a lot of the other things that we're trying to push on people.
I'd like to make myself unpopular and say something critical. Thank you. Let's hear it first. Not all amounts of testing is always good. You can also overdo it. I mean, a test case comes at a cost, and if it doesn't fit the team, and if it's not done well, if you just have all false positives, the maintenance cost of a project can actually go up and can slow a team down. And I'd like to bring back the first opening talk from Wirt in everybody's attention. I think we just as well need to focus on good tools, on clean abstractions and clean concepts. I think they're equally important to make a team productive and bring quality to a product.
And we go run and run again, and because test first helps you develop clean abstractions. I mean, making a code testable fixes your architecture, essentially. Yeah, you can leave. But I do agree that there is a tipping point. You have a point where you should stop some testing. You can't exhaustively test everything, so you need to sit back and decide exactly how much you need to invest in the test.
I think I mean a different level of abstraction, not on the code design necessarily, but also on the tools we use. We keep developing these new cool tools that help us do these new things, which is great, right? But the debuggability and the testability of these new tools, we always start from scratch again, right? Our languages get more and more complicated. The concepts don't get easier. So that's on a different level. Test, right?
I'm just going to make the comment as far as like the cost of testing. I think the observation is notice in the room who's not here, who's not present. And the one thing I've observed now being in startup land for the last year is there aren't a lot of people from startups here. Mostly we're all kind of representative of companies who, well, could probably afford to send us here. That's one filter to that. Startups are kind of cheap, but that goes back to the cost of testing. It's really expensive to do testing, let's be honest, especially if you're a little two-person startup and trying to sell testing to companies. We noticed startups don't care about testing until they've gone in production, until it's important, until they've been embarrassed by a production bug. But I think Kent Beck made a really good blog post a couple of months ago. Again, he was talking about his experiences in testing and startups, and he realized when there's a certain point where the project is not ready for a full regimen of testing. The first couple of months, especially in startup land where you have to crank out those features. So that's the important thing of like, if you have to do those stories to people to like, we need to do more testing, we need to do more testing, that the thing is, they might not be ready, and it might actually be the correct decision that, just doing the hallway testing or the dog food testing, that's enough, because the project is not important yet, it hasn't made revenue yet. So always be looking for that filter of like, maybe we shouldn't be pushing it, wait until it's important, then do it. And sometimes we don't see that. And that's been my filter lately, is seeing who are the people not present in the room.
It's also important to build the right product, not just to build the product right?
In terms of kind of the absolute cost of testing, and it does seem to be very expensive, and I think that has a lot to do with the specific skill set that's involved. I would imagine more or less everyone here has spent a lot of time and invested a lot of their own effort and passion into becoming knowledgeable testers. And I think part of that has to do with something that James Whitaker, I think is his name, has been talking about on the Google testing blog. I don't know which of these 7 plagues it was, but I'm going to go with lore, or there being a lack of lore, where we all test in our own way and we all tend to make our own mistakes and learn from them and become better testers that way, which I think is great for us individually and provides a lot of job security. But people trying to get into the field don't really have too many options other than to spend a lot of time making their own mistakes. And it seems like there are efforts going on to improve that. We were talking about the testing education topic at the table yesterday, and it was mentioned there were some certifications that were available and some training courses, and that seems like a good start. But even just, what's the hello world for software testing? Is it as easy to find as, the hello world for Java? Hasn't been in my experience, and I think it's kind of that obscurity that makes it very difficult for startups to consider this testing, because it's going to be very expensive for them to bring the right people in, to get the right system set up. Okay, should I keep talking?
Well, I'm Adrian. My job is to convince the management of the importance of testing, and our message is always, it's about risk, right? So if you talk about cost and value, as example for a startup, where is the risk of, that the quality is bad? I think the risk is not that high in first place, right? So you might test less. So in more like 2 years old projects, the risk is higher, so you have to test more. And that's something that management understands and people understand. Even the developer understands that. If you think this is a risky function, you have to test it more. If it's less risky, you test less. I think that's the easiest way to approach it. Think about how important is it, test it more, test it less. It's a very easy advice.
The specific point is that at the very beginning of the project, the risk of just not ever getting anything live into production is greater than not having tested it, especially in an automated fashion. So especially on a very new initiative, the first 3 months, you're going to get a lot of pushback from, unless we're test infected like we all are. Otherwise, the people say, no. The number one risk in the project is we have to go live.
On a somewhat tangential note, did I interrupt you? I'll be quick. I read a blog post yesterday just related to testing in the open source world about someone who has decided to ensure that they have 100% coverage for anything they release open source. simply on the basis that that way, if they receive any patches that don't meet that mark, they have an easy way to reject them without saying, well, your code is crap?
Yeah, I mean, on the cost of testing, like I said before, there's a tipping point. There's an uphill battle to get to the test, to a point where you test enough your product, your application, whatever, or where you have automated enough tests. Automation is even more of an uphill battle actually in the beginning when you set up that. One of my favorite subjects, a task close to my heart, is actually to be able to reduce the angle of the uphill trek. Essentially, to be able to set up the testing infrastructure that a project needs faster. At the moment, it costs us quite a bit because we have many disparate tools. They don't really talk with each other. There's a lot of glue. I mean, things like graphing test results, getting useful information out of a timeline of tests on the same code base, figuring out what it did 2 months ago and which parts of your code are the really flaky ones that tend to break by every check-in or every other check-in. Things like that. They are kind of project specific. Everybody does its own way. So, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of work in that area. We gotta get together on that.
I think we have an unsolved contradiction, or a contradiction. The textbook, and I think TD by now is textbook in that the way to develop software is to start with high quality and to continue having a high quality and adding features on the way, right? We all know that this is the way to get good and maintainable software. But as other people have rightfully argued, in particular in startup situations and in some other situations, that's not the way to go. You want to go to market first for other reasons, right? And I haven't seen a textbook, and we haven't addressed the problem of how do you switch over from the one phase to the other. I don't know.
Yeah, I think one thing I don't think there's like a linear, the graph of value, the amount of money you spend and the value you get from your tests. I don't think it's linear, which I think is another thing for like startup companies. That when we started, we had a suite of tests that we probably invested quite a lot in, but we had a lot of problems with them, and we weren't really getting a whole lot of value from them. There was one point when I moved them to run a different infrastructure. I ran them, all bar one passed. When I looked at what was wrong, the server hadn't started up, and all by one of them had passed. And we had quite a lot of investment in them, but we actually had no value from them at all. We spent quite a lot of time making the test fast, reliable. And I think, yeah, we found that the value, to get the value to go up, it was kind of like a hump. But once you get over the top of that hump, you start to get real value, and the amount you have to do has sort of gone down. Yeah, and we found, in terms of how you measure it, we tried to use a lot of metrics, things like time it takes to run, the stability of them, things like that. But I think we have more value from the sort of anecdotal type things that we noticed. So our big goal was to get them to run in a submit queue. So we run large Selenium tests every time people submit. And yeah, we have some like metrics about it. But the other day I did a code review, and I saw in the submit queue, these tests had failed, and a developer had got an enum completely wrong. That wouldn't have been caught until the release had been cut and someone had noticed that. But we caught that before, and the value of that, I think, was kind of a lot more indicative than any sort of metrics.
So with that, I want to come to the last question, and it's actually interesting. Like, so one thing that we discussed the most was actually the value of testing, and there was no session at GTAC about the value of testing. And the question actually is, should we have more open space type sessions at GTAC to allow actually sessions like this that are not on the program, where people just have a spontaneous idea saying, hey, I want to talk about this or this. Would this fit into this like very small format, 2 days, or would that be too much of a distraction?
Let the people up front know that you have that idea. Then we all can prepare, I guess. I mean, for me, like yesterday was a bit shorter notice. It was like, oh, 5 minutes. Yeah. don't. I mean, there are many things we all can talk about, but maybe just 2 days up front, give us a note and say we have that option, and then I think open space would work pretty well.
I really enjoyed both the lightning talks yesterday and this open forum at the end, and also having the tables and having the different discussions on the tables. I think those three things have allowed us to have a certain amount of sort of directed and open forums. I don't know if we need any more. I don't know what people think on that.
Maybe a bit more time on the round tables, because when you combine them with food, is do I eat or do I talk?
Okay, so no more food, and then we can talk.
Oops. Okay. He said no more food, then that means.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm back. You want to leave? Oh, sorry, it's got to be 4, right? Okay. I think the format is perfect. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think the idea of doing lightning talks is excellent. It puts people in a mode where they immediately focus on what is most pressing for them. I think we need to trust the attendance, that someone who gets up and talks about sugar in cappuccino and how exactly he does it. I think we need to trust that in there is a message for us as an industry that's more important than maybe if we opened up, more time for just rambling discussions like this one. What I think is important, the idea of making it 2 days, single track, very finely controlled in terms of time and so on. I think that is good, because we don't have a lot of time. We're extremely busy. We're extremely stretched. We've got to focus on multiple different things while we're doing our jobs. We get to sit here for 2 days and just hear what the leaders in the industry think is important, and for me that's critical.
Okay, so I guess with that, you guys are free. Thank you.
Yeah, this was surprisingly fun. I had no idea how this would work out. I enjoyed the moment where 4 visitors were sitting here. That was cool. So thanks again. This is it. End of day 2. Have safe trips home. And I hope to see all of you next year again, where we plan to have a repeat of this. Not quite clear where, but we do want to have another GTAC next year. Okay? Safe travels home. Take care.